Erik McKinney here with Darrell, Rideaux. We're going to break down USC's 30-27 overtime loss to BYU, and plenty of issues came up. This was off a high against Stanford where you think, look at this, we have turned the page from 2018. Here's our new offense. Here's what the defense looks like, and we figured things out in the second half. First series of the game, USC goes right down and scores, and then issues, and a lot of the same issues that we saw from 2018. Darrell, your thought. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball for USC. They put up some yards, they scored some points, but where are the issues for you? Where are the big issues that you saw coming out of this BYU game?
Well, it's interesting because I think that first series gave Kedon Slovis and his offense, directed under Graham Harrell, a false sense of security, that they were going to be able to dictate their will and go down and march and do as they please. And lo and behold, you got to recognize that other teams are on scholarships. Other teams are coached up very well, and they know that you're going to be scripting your first 20-plus plays. They stayed in their BYU stayed in their vanilla offense or defense and allowed the offense to do exactly what they perceived that the game plan would be. And lo and behold, they played key to form. Kedon Slovis looked very good, very polished on that first series, hitting Michael Pittman Jr. And everything felt like, okay, USC is going to be rolling. But then the adjustments started to come. What did we see from BYU? We saw them rush 4 to 5, drop 7 and 8 at times, and really try to take away those quick, those hot routes, those quick slants and outs. And it just seemed like Slovis on the road in a hostile environment in high altitude at times pressed, tried to force the ball in where against Stanford perhaps he would have gotten those plays. But Erik, I have to imagine that it was almost like a sticker shot. Like, whoa, I'm not able to get these balls into those pockets. And the frustration that I have offensively is the inability or the lack of ability to adjust and adapt to what BYU was taking away from USC. It took USC too long to realize that, okay, against obvious, formations, that these are higher probabilities to run the ball effectively and control the tempo with it. This was a game, to be honest with you, Erik, if BYU decided to take away the pass, no problem. I got a stable of horses from Stephen Carr to Vavai Malapai and Marquis Stepp. Welcome back to the NC2A. Welcome back to USC when it comes to being on the football field. This was a game truly set up for a 300-yard rushing game where USC should have dictated tempo and controlled the game. And off of that rhythm and play action, then took their shots. But because we didn't see that, we saw a reluctance to accept and concede that you weren't going to throw the ball into these pockets. What did that result to? It resulted into 2 interceptions thrown by Kedon Slovis. Thought that perhaps his confidence might be a little rattled, but it wasn't. He made some key adjustments that we would talk about later.
Yeah, and it felt like what we've seen against Arizona's defense in the past, where you watch it and just go, they're completely outmanned in the box, just run, and then run, and then run, and then run, right, until they adjust it. And USC just, they did run the ball, but it never felt like they fully bought into it and said, okay, we're going to dictate on this side of the ball. When BYU, if it's the tennis match, when BYU throws the ball back into USC's court, it's like they didn't really know what to do with it. And there was just a lot of confusion where it seemed like eventually we'll be able to throw the ball again, but they never just tried to dominate on the line of scrimmage. And a lot of that was because BYU's nose tackle played the entire game on the other side of the line, and he really just kind of ruined things at times for the USC offense. And that was a tough thing. You could tell that the USC always thought like, well, eventually we'll get him under control. And they were just never able to do that. I imagine going forward from this, I'd like to hear from you, maybe with Kedon Slovis especially, and then the offense kind of as a whole. What are some things that you can build on, maybe some positives that you saw, and then some things where, look, this might not be fixable, and this might be something where they have to kind of find maybe a workaround
Right.
for this for the rest of the season.
Well, I think the one telling thing, if you're going to take anything positive out of a loss, the loss did come to a non-conference team, albeit, and I'm not trying to, paint lipstick on a pig by no stretch of the imagination. USC went into a game and it felt like they got counterpunched and really didn't have a response to it. But I like the way, as the game wore on, they started to figure out some things. Granted, Keaton Slovis, as good as he looked against Stanford, he is still a true freshman, and he's still a young true freshman, playing in that hostile environment, not probably able to really hear and see the field the way that he does in the confines of the Coliseum is one thing. But what I like that he did was he moved the pocket. It wasn't a scramble. He wasn't dashing for first downs. What he did was he slid in the pocket to create these windows, and that he can build off of. Because what's on paper and where your landmarks are, oftentimes against a team like a BYU that wants to take away your windows, you're going to have to move that pocket. The one thing that I would like to see more from the receivers is a commitment to come back to the ball, not just sit there and wait for the ball to come to them. I thought that they did him a disservice. They, meaning the slot receivers from USC, did Keaton Slovis a disservice by sitting in those pockets, knowing that there was flashing defenders around. I thought perhaps if they came back towards him, that it would have made for easy pitch and catch. But I think that this is something that they can build off of. The fact that they did get exposed, this offense, and was manipulated into obvious situations that caused them to become one-dimensional. They are going to have to counterbalance that and commit to the best play, which is the true nature of balance. The best play at that time. Maybe perhaps when you're sending in plays, give Keaton Slovis an alternative to just a pass play. Throw in a run play, so that he has an option to audible out of. This kid is smart enough and cerebral. He showed it. He's poised even when things don't go well. And I credit that to going, 3-7, 3-8 in his high school year, where things don't always go well. You got to find the positive out of something. So again, there are some things to build off of. But from a coaching standpoint, I thought that there was a few teaching moments, Erik. For example, situational football, playing for a tie. Was that the best thing when you're on the road in a hostile environment? No, I thought that they should have been more aggressive on that last series. And beyond that, again, they were fortunate to finish the regulation in overtime, because there were a few plays that could have gone either way, where this could have been a landslide by BYU.
Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. It felt like at times that they were okay and playing well. Certainly they kind of rose up when you really needed them to. The fourth down stop inside your own 10-yard line. And then in overtime, BYU they lose a yard on their possession. You force a field goal, which is just about as good as you're going to do when the opposing team has a very good kicker and is starting at the 25-yard line. But BYU makes just enough plays, and they're the plays that we've become so accustomed to seeing USC giving up. A little flare to a running back that converts a 3rd and 15. When the quarterback is scrambling, you can't get a hand on him. He throws up a 35-yard pass downfield to a guy who is uncovered. It's things like that, just kind of stuff that seems to be falling through the gaps where USC can't just close things together, and throw out a defensive scheme and 11 guys that are all working on the same page, where the opposing offense can't find gaps and holes. What did you see from the USC defense, and kind of how did BYU attack it? And really, is this something that every team on the schedule going forward is going to be able to do, where we're still going to see these issues cropping up every week?
Great question. And here's what I saw. I saw a defensive unit that is still coming together, but missed one of their key leaders, Christian Rector. Did not start the game, did not even suit up for this game. So now you talk about the depth, and you like to believe that you're going to grow with that depth. But the truth be told, depth is great in spurts. But for the duration of a football game, it rears its head in terms of the amount of experience taken off the field, the attention to details. In addition to Rector being off the field, you lose Greg Johnson early on in the slot. Those are two pivotal parts of the defense in the nucleus, the core middle center of the defense that wasn't there. So as a result, what did you see? You saw BYU take advantage of soft edges. You saw BYU with that misdirection leak out tight ends or slot receivers in the slot and take advantage of chunk plays. To me, it boils down no further than this. Love to blame the coaches, but I can't blame the coaches because these are new coaches, and we spent all offseason in the first few games giving them credit for developing the talent around them and teaching them up. This comes down to it's a mentality. It's a mindset of how you prepare, the attention to details that you're paying attention to, and self-evaluating and self-scouting your own mistakes. Because trust me, an offensive coordinator watching USC's defense is going to continue to feature in their package the fly series, running misdirection. They're also going to see a ton of more bunch sets because out of those bunch sets, it requires communication and gap sound integrity. Two things that USC continues to plague them. They find themselves misfitting, misaligning, and as a result of that, you find a running back like Tyson Williams, conceding to his average, 99 yards, but it was the effectiveness of when those 99 yards came that really hurts USC. So the question is asked, have they made any changes? I put this film on against BYU. I go back to UCLA to end the season. I don't see a difference in terms of how they're setting the edge and how they're defending against certain situations. Perhaps that is an indictment on the scheme that Clancy is running. But I know one other thing. You got to understand awareness of where you are on the football field. Inside the 30-yard line, you have to treat that like the red zone and get out of man coverage. Force teams to throw the ball over your head so that all 11 guys defensively are seeing the same sets. What did we see? We saw in a crucial time in the fourth quarter, BYU fan their skill players out, leaving the middle of the field. It parted like the Red Sea, to use an overused analogy. But it did. The middle of the field was wide open, and Zach Wilson, the quarterback of BYU, went in unabated into the end zone at a critical time when you really needed to stop. So can they get better? I believe they can get better in spurts, but I'm not certain that we're going to see, unless the scheme changes, we're going to see much success long-term if Clancy continues to dial up man coverage in situations where they really should be in zone.
Yeah, and this is something where Utah can look at some of this film that BYU did, and even Fresno State too. Utah has pretty much everything that has hit them. You've got a powerful running back in Zach Moss, clearly the best running back that they'll have faced to this point, and maybe the best running back that they'll see all season. You have a slot guy in Britton Covey who you can do a ton of stuff with in terms of movement in the backfield. And then you've got a quarterback in Tyler Huntley, who is, again, the best running quarterback that they'll have seen to this point. It feels like that defense is going to get tested big time against Utah. Is there anything that they can build on? Is there anything that they can sort of do to help set the edge, to kind of get to a point where you can play against a Utah offense that has got to be very excited about coming in and playing a USC defense, seeing what they gave up against a BYU offense that Utah really shut down in the first game of the season?
Yeah, there are a few things that can be done. But again, it really starts with the mindset and the buy-in, because you talked about playing against Utah. Utah is a more talented BYU that's enhanced position by position. But defensively, what can USC do? Well, you can go an underfront, meaning you can hover more guys around the line of scrimmage to force Utah to remain east and west. But you also have to play in layers. So maybe sticking to a 4-3 and allowing those linebackers to hit one gap downhill and recognize where they should be, as opposed to doing these two gaps. It seems to be confusing them because when they're coming downhill, they're finding themselves in the same gap situations. And then the other thing is communication. There is no reason whatsoever why you should have two defenders spying the quarterback. It can never happen. but it happened in this past game. You got your nose dropping back, and then you have a linebacker also dropping in to spy the quarterback, and now you got a leak out. Again, it always comes down to communication and confirming that you understand what you need to do. What do they need to do to fix that? Again, that's going to be a situation where they're going to have to correct that not only in practice, but maybe ensure that players understand what their assignments are.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a short week for USC, and Utah is coming to the Coliseum, and Utah has not done well in the Coliseum, but you got to imagine that the Utes are looking forward to getting their Pac-12 schedule started on Friday. So for Rideaux, this is Erik McKinney. That's our look back at USC dropping a 30-27 overtime decision at BYU. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.